everyone, welcome back to Mandy's Minis, and as promised we have a tutorial today. Here you can see I have a few figures from Impact Minis. These are the rest of the Labyrinth figures, so I'm going to paint them up and you'll be able to see them on display at the conventions this year, including Adepticon and probably Gen Con. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about priming. It is an important part of painting, so let's get started. Now I am using this stuff, and there's nothing special about it. It's just what my local hobby store had, and it's just an acrylic primer, black. Any brush-on primer or airbrush primer is great. If you don't have an airbrush, you can brush it on. You can also use rattle cans, but be careful because some rattle cans react differently with certain plastics, so they're not safe for all models. And I'm going to go ahead and pause while I get the airbrush set up and we'll get started. Okay, so first step, there's nothing really special to it. I am going to cover the model with the primer. And you'll notice here that I actually will be using a second airbrush later. And that is because I do have two airbrushes. One is a very nice Iwata that works with precision. And this one here is a cheaper one. It's a Masters. So I always recommend this one for beginners. This was my first airbrush. And if you are interested in airbrushes, I recommend starting here because it is so cheap. The airbrush itself is only like $25, and you're going to break it as you're learning to use it. I certainly did. Everyone else does. It's just part of the learning process. So start cheap and then work your way up to a better one. That's exactly what I did, and I love it. One of the important things to know when you're priming these is make sure you get underneath. So that way, any of these places where we can't reach with our brush, we already have primed black and we don't have to worry about it because it's not bare metal or plastic, depending on the material of what's being primed. So there's nothing special here. I'm going to go ahead and continue this up while the airbrush tank keeps running. Sorry about that noise, but it's part of airbrushing. So I have a bunch of these to do, and then I'm going to show you some nifty tricks to take it to the next step to make the rest of your painting process easy and fun. All right, I am back, and I am going to show you, for all those who don't have an airbrush, how to do a Zenithal prime without the airbrush. And this cute little guy, also from Impact Mini, is going to be our model for this. All I am using is Reaper's Solid White and a nice big makeup brush. Actually, this is one of Artist Opus's dry brushes, and I love these. These are great. And we're just going to do a heavy dry brush over the top. And suddenly, the details become a lot more clear. So one of the best reasons to use a Zenithal prime, get you better in camera here, is because you do get to see so much more of the minis. All the details seem to come into focus, and you're not looking looking at it, wondering, is that a pouch? Is that a bottle? Is that a scroll? I mean, this mini happens to be pretty easy to read anyway. Something on his arm here. Okay, so he's pretty easy to read anyway, but it just kind of makes everything easier to pop and gives you a better place to start. We could theoretically start painting right up from the primed mini, but it takes a lot of coats to cover black, whereas it doesn't take nearly as much to cover gray, which is what the white becomes when it goes over the black. Grayish white. Okay. Okay, so here I'm going to show you a Zenithal prime. And what we do for that, actually, let me grab a different one. There we go. So what we do for that is the light is going to come down from above and acting as if the sun was in the zenith. That's why it's called that. Nice, bright. So basically what you're going to do is spray the model from the top down, and you can see we already get a better look. We can read the model a lot clearer. And it's a bit smoother than when we did it with the dry brush. So if you can do it with an airbrush or a rattle can, that just gives you a little bit more of a smoother result. This one doesn't matter because a little texture on his skin is going to look awesome. So that's why I chose that one. But we can also do a variation of it. And since I want all of my labyrinth figures to match, I'm going to do her with my Sarah with my normal Zenithal, which is just a little bit, rather than coming straight up, I'm going to actually come from the side. So the light's going to be traveling this way at her. And that's going to allow me to get a little more shadowing in. So I'm going to start very gently, just hitting the whole model this way, and then flipping it to the back, and hitting it again. And then coming over to this side, and I am going to hit it just a little bit on this side, because in regular lighting, you're not going to have total darkness over here. But that is a great way, if you do want to hit extreme lighting, to be able to control it by just controlling where your light's coming from. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to brighten it a little bit in those areas where it would be brighter, so we can make it closer to white. And those are going to be the areas that the sun hits a little bit harder. And you can see that nice shading we've got here already. So another way to utilize this is if you're doing a slap chop or any kind of speed painting, you've already got some natural gradations right there. So it will speed you up and speed up your painting time. And then we're going to do the same thing just back here. And this side being the shadowed side, we're going to leave right there in that gray area. So that's how I typically do 99% of my Zenithal. Okay, one other fun thing that you can do with highlighting this way, with this figure you can see, maybe, you can see that there's quite a few lanterns. So that's where the light's going to come from. So I'm going to actually flood those with light and use this as my light source, because light moves in straight lines and doesn't go through things, and moves a lot like paint through an airbrush. So same thing back here. We're going to highlight those areas because we're going to be getting the light from those lanterns. But see, the light's not going to come back here because the fabric's blocking it from that. So that's where our lights are. So we're going to make sure those are nice and bright. And then highlight the rest. And I'm not going to go bright with the rest because, as we all know from the OSL videos, you need dark in order to make that light. So I don't want to overpower it, but I don't want to leave it too dark either, because there would still be some ambient light. So there you go. For this, I am using Dollaroni's purple ink. Purple Lake is what it's called. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from below with the purple. So rather than having these just plain black shadows, we're creating purple shadows. Now I'm only coming up from underneath because I only want this to hit the shadow area. Everywhere we're coming from up underneath. Right. And then I'm going to come back in with my white, and I'm going to do my white like I normally would. Doesn't have to be white. You can do yellow, you can do any kind of bright shade here. Any bright highlight color would look awesome. And you can see it's got that neat purple shadow. So when we paint, that's going to add a little bit more of a different and artistic effect. Once again, doesn't have to be purple. You can use a brown or a blue. Man, purple is my favorite shadow color and my favorite color in general, but you can do it with other colors was the whole point of that. So I encourage you to go ahead and explore, and if you want to know more about these kind of shadows and more artistic takes, definitely check out my video on finding color. And that's it for now. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you have any other techniques or interesting ways of highlighting and priming yourself, then please go ahead and let me know. And until next time, have fun and keep creating.